Star Wars 7x7, episode 1932. Today, Daisy Ridley talks Reylo. We get a new image of Zorii Bliss. There's a new addition to the team behind the Cassian Andor series, and there's new word about the gameplay for Jedi Fallen Order. Yeah, it's a roundup of a bunch of Star Wars news that doesn't all merit its own show, but taken together, it's time for some potpourri. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So let's start off with the Rise of Skywalker news. And both of these tidbits come from Entertainment Weekly. I should mention that Entertainment Weekly actually did a fall movie preview. It's on their website. It looks like a big feature on there, but as far as there being anything specific and special about the Rise of Skywalker, well, no, sadly, that is not the case. But there have been dribs and drabs of new information appearing on Entertainment Weekly's website, two of which we're going to talk about here. One of them has to do with a new photo that was released, which features Zorii Bliss in her full getup, holding up some sort of cylindrical, no, actually it would just be circular. Cylindrical would be like an actual tube. No, a circular object, which is in the article hypothesized as being a coin or a data device of some sort. Personally, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think it's something that was created by Babu Frick to help the Resistance hack some sort of critical droid system, or maybe even a computer system. And then there is a bit about Daisy Ridley addressing the whole concept of Reylo. That, of course, is the notion that Rey and Kylo Ren might get involved in some sort of romantic relationship. So Daisy Ridley in an interview says that JJ does deal with it. It's a very complex issue. People talk about toxic relationships and whatever it is. It's no joke, and I think that it's dealt with really well because it's not skimmed over. So, yeah, I think if you decided you wanted to parse that, you could probably do something with it. In fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and take one shot at it, and, obviously you can come up with your own interpretation. Now, a toxic relationship doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but considering that the notion of Reylo is a romantic situation, I think you're talking about that kind of situation. And because it's described as a toxic relationship, it means that either one or both of the characters realize at some level that this relationship is very bad for that particular person and needs to get out of it, or at least the goal would be to get out of it. So yeah, I don't think that necessarily bodes well for the notion of Rey and Kylo Ren ultimately ending up as a romantic couple at the end of this story, but again, up to your own interpretation. Meanwhile, Esquire magazine of all places, a men's style and culture magazine, kind of unusual for them to be reporting on Jedi Fallen Order, but they have been reporting on Star Wars stuff. I need to find a better word, a more polite word than clickbait, but they have been producing a lot of clickbaity-like articles on Star Wars-related rumors and leaks and spoilers and whatnot. It feels like it's, maybe a bit of a level up from some other outlets that I've seen it on, but be that as it may. There's a legit interview with Stig Asmussen, who is the director of Jedi Fallen Order, that's coming out from EA and Respawn Entertainment next month, and it's a conversation about thoughtful, grounded lightsaber combat, and the person who did the interview played some initial stuff in the game into saying that it feels like the best lightsaber combat that has been depicted in video games so far. But the biggest news to come out of Star Wars this week is the fact that Tony Gilroy has joined the Cassian Andor series, or at least this is what Variety is reporting. They're not citing official sources, or at least not named sources, and Lucasfilm has not made this an official announcement. So you do have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but Stuff like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, like these industry trade publications, that's about as reliable an unnamed source situation as you're going to get. So Tony Gilroy now joining the Cassian Andor series, and Stephen Schiff, who is the showrunner and former showrunner for The Americans, which was a very successful spy drama TV show, he's still on board. He is still the showrunner, but Tony Gilroy is coming on to write a pilot episode and to direct several episodes of the series. Now, there were other rumors kicking around, and these were not mentioned in the Variety article, so presumably they don't have any sources that are saying anything like this. But other folks are claiming that there were problems with story and scripts that were being developed with the Cassian Andor series, and that things had been shut down because they were not strong enough, and that possibly the whole series was going to be shelved. Whether or not this has anything to do with Tony Gilroy being brought into the situation is anybody's guess. And again, because Variety did not report those particular rumors, I think you have to take those with a larger grain of salt. But be that as it may, Tony Gilroy already has a great reputation as a fixer for Lucasfilm because he was the guy who was brought on to do the reshoots for Rogue One and supervise the final edit of the movie. In fact, he basically redid the entire final act of Rogue One. So yeah, it's a good thing that he's coming on board for this because he also has experience with the characters. I mean, Cassian and K2, they're leading this series from a character standpoint, and Tony Gilroy is already well acquainted with them. So much the better. And that is going to do it for the recap of the big bits of Star Wars news that have come out recently, but again, don't necessarily warrant their own episode. There is one other thing I want to discuss with you, and I mentioned it on the Hope episode about The Force Awakens. It's the thing about how Daisy Ridley thinks that The Force Awakens already addressed the situation with Rey's parents, and so I'm going to explain that right after the break. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So, cast your mind back to The Force Awakens and the scene right after Rey has had her Force back vision and she goes flying back into the hallway in the basement of Maz's castle, and she tells Maz that she has to get back to Jakku, and Maz says, dear girl, like, I can see it in your eyes, like, you know the truth, whoever you were waiting for on Jakku, they're not coming back, but there's someone who still can, to which Rey replies, Luke. And so the implication here is, number one, Luke has nothing to do with whoever it is that she's waiting for, which then you can easily deduce from that he can't be Rey's father, okay? So there's that. There's number one. Number two, the suggestion that Rey's parents are, either dead or are so far gone that they are completely out of the picture and have nothing to do with who she is or, anything like that. That is pretty strongly suggested by that set of dialogue. And so when Daisy Ridley says, yeah, I thought this was all settled in The Force Awakens, that, her parents were gone, that they're really not a part of the story. And essentially that same thing is reinforced by Ben Solo when they have that interaction in The Last Jedi. So J.J. Abrams can tell us that there is more to the story and that he's going to honor what came before, but he's already basically said the same thing in The Force Awakens that Rian Johnson said in The Last Jedi. And so ultimately, whatever there is that's more to the story is just going to bring Rey closure for her own benefit, because the most difficult thing that she could have faced was finding out that she is really truly alone in the galaxy and that, there is no connection to anyone else out there. And so, to face that and to get closure on that, I think that's the direction this is heading. My 2 cents. Share your 2 cents with me wherever you catch this episode or at SW7X7.com. And that is going to do it for this episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.